Hello, everyone. Thank you and welcome to Tsukiji Hongwanji English Dharma Service. Let me begin my talk with Gassho. Please join me in Gassho. Namanda, 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 namanda. The unhindered light filling the 10 quarters shines on the beings in the darkness of ignorance and unfailingly brings the attainment of nirvana, the person who realizes the one moment of joy. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Well, it is my great pleasure and honor to share with you my Dharma talk today. Let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Tomofumi FUJII. Currently, I am the resident minister at Jonenji Temple in Shiga Prefecture in Moriyama City. Before I took over my family temple from my father, I was a Kaikyoshi minister in Canada for over 9 years. Therefore, I'm able to speak basic English, but please excuse my language skill, but I'll try my best to share the Dharma with you today. Although it is important to listen to the Buddha Dharma, regardless the condition. However, due to COVID-19, it is not the best choice, perhaps, to have in-person gathering at this point. But I hope through this video, wider audience will be able to listen to my talk, regardless time differences and the locations, just like working of Amida Buddha. Frankly speaking, even being a minister, I sometimes get bored with the sutra chanting because we do similar chanting all the time. But now I'm really missing it. And I now feel how important to gather in person at a temple. And we chant often Shoshinge or other chantings or sutras harmoniously with others. And how important to continue this Dharma gathering. And I really hope that we will be able to have in-person gathering at a temple soon. For my opening, I quoted the Shinran Shonin's writing, a hymns of the Pure Land Masters chapter on Tanran. And let me share my screen with you. The first line, unhindered light, filling the 10 quarters. And this, of course, light represents Amida Buddha or Amida Buddha's teachings. And it is unhindered. Nothing can block Amida Buddha's teachings. And 10 quarters means no particular place or directions. In other words, Buddha's teachings spread everywhere. Amida Buddha's working or teachings have no limitation on space. The second line, shines on the beings in the darkness of ignorance. The light from Amida Buddha makes us realize our ignorance. So without light, we are the dark. That's Shinran Shonin explained to us. The third line unfailingly brings the attain of nirvana. Amida Buddha surely brings us to attain of nirvana or enlightenment in our afterlife. The last line was the person who realizes the one-third moment of joy. Once we have encountered the Amida's light, we have a feeling of peace and a joy in our hearts and a mind. The topic for today's talk as Nembutsu resonate throughout the world. And again, Amida Buddha delivers his virtues through the name or Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, to the people in the 10 quarters. Simply, Amida Buddha's name is delivered to everyone equally. And it is just like sunlight. The sun shines on everyone equally. And if it doesn't matter if you like or not. So to start with my main talk today, and through my 9 years of experience as a Kaikyoshi minister in Canada, I would like to briefly introduce the history of Jodo Shinshu in Canada. The late Meiji period, the young Japanese, mostly male, moved to Canada because there is a job opportunity. And most of them worked in sawmills or as a fishing industry. And depending on what part of Japan they came from. And they settled in around the Vancouver area. And every year, the numbers of population of Japanese immigrants increased. And especially with the east part of Vancouver City, along with the Powell Street. It was flourished with the shops and businesses which owned by Japanese people. And eventually, Japantown was formed. And around the same time, the need for religion was increased for their spirituality. On October 10th, 1904, 14 Buddhist men gathered at home of Mr. Nagao, and they discussed about the two things: building a temple and requesting a Buddhist minister from Nishi Honganji in Kyoto. And the response to their request, the Nishi Honganji sent the Kaikyoshi or overseas ministers to Canada. And this picture showed on a screen is a Reverend Senju Sasaki, who was the first Kaikyoshi minister for Canada, and with his wife. And they arrived in Vancouver on October 12th, 1905. And 2 weeks after the arrival, the first Buddhist service and Dharma talk was given. The picture on the screen, actually, this is not the first building of Hongwanji in Canada. The first building was just a regular house was purchased, and it was renovated and converted into the temple, but numbers of attendees are increased, and they decided to build the temple. So picture showed on the screen, this is the first temple which was submitted to the city, and the city approved this project. This building was, the construction was completed on February 1911. And during the time, Dharma School, Women's Association, the study group, as many activities were held. However, on December 7th, 1941, with attack on Pearl Harbor, the outbreak of the Pacific War changes the whole situation. And immediately, the government of Canada passed the legislation on removal of all Japanese and Japanese Canadians at least 100 miles from the coast. And this picture shows on a screen was there's an order that they are gathered at Hastings Park, and the officer was those the Japanese people are sent to assigned the internment camp. So this is another picture on Hastings Park. And most of the internment camp was set up near the Rockies, and there's old coal mining town, or almost a ghost town. And they set up the very simple houses for lodging. And this picture is one of the location called Lemon Creek. The other camp is Kashme. One of the internment camp, this is actually a place called Slocan. Even during the internment camp, a Buddhist service was held. And in 1945, the conclusion of the war, the Canadian government decided to close these internment camps. And they gave to all Japanese and Japanese Canadians two options: either to go east of the Rockies or go back to Japan. And as a result, many people decided to move east. And actually, until 1949, the Japanese and Japanese Canadians are not not permitted to return to the West Coast, originally where they are before the war. With this history, the Jodo Shinshu Buddhism was transmitted to eastern part of Canada. Presently, the Canadian district or organization is officially called Jodo Shinshu Buddhist Temples of Canada. And formerly, the name was Buddhist Churches of Canada. But at national meeting, they decided to change their organizational name to identify themselves. More specifically, Jodo Shinshu Buddhist Temples. They changed this organization's name. And headquarters resides in Richmond, BC, just south of Vancouver. And presently, the Kaikyoshi, the only 5 ministers. And temples are 12 locations or temples. Membership is 1,248 members as of the March 2021. And as I mentioned, the 12 temples, these all temples are listed and divided into 4 districts. Let me show some of the picture or images of these temples. This is the image of Vancouver Buddhist Temple. And this Buddhist temple stands right beside to Hastings Park, where just before the World War II, all Japanese and Japanese Canadians are called for just before the war internment camp. And this is the image of Stevenston Buddhist Temple. I moved to Alberta province, the Calgary Buddhist Temple. And this is the image of Buddhist temples of southern Alberta. Used to be southern part of Alberta, there are 6 temples. But due to aging population and declining membership, they decided to amalgamate it into one temples or group. So in 2012, there's a temple dedication service for this building. This is the image of Toronto Buddhist Church, where I used to be a resident minister. Actually, this building is really new building. Before, the temple was located in downtown Toronto. And the old building was sold, and they decided to move to a new location. So in 2005, there's a dedication ceremony for opening this new building. Conjunction with the centennial celebration of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism in Canada. While I was a Kaikyoshi minister in Toronto, I had a really good experience as well as bad experience. I really like about the Toronto city is very diverse. People immigrated from many different countries, different cultures, different languages, different background, but people are living in a city harmoniously. One street in Toronto, there is a Christian church and another church right beside, and across the road, there's Buddhist temple, and one block away, there's a synagogue and another Christian church. That's I don't see it in Japan. Also, the worst experience I had in Toronto was year-end temple bell ringing. In Toronto, the temple bell is located in a national park, and the park is right beside the Lake Ontario. On December 31st, we do the bell ringing. And one year, it hit minus 28 degrees outside. It was bone chilly experience. Through the 9 years of experience as a Kaikyoshi minister in Canada, I was fortunate to encounter the wonderful individuals. So let me introduce a couple of individuals. The Mr. Tanaka, he was a Nisei individual. So he was born in Canada, but his parents made the decision to give his an education in Japan. So he was sent to his grandparents in Japan. And when he was a little, and he spent his childhood in Japan with his grandparents. When he became a teenager, just before the World War II, he was able to make it to the last boat to go back to Canada. And after returning to Canada, he was to the internment camp along with many other Japanese and Japanese descendants. Then after the war, Tanaka family decided to move east, and they are settled in Toronto. Because of his educational background, he was more comfortable with Japanese language. And whenever Japanese Sunday service was held, he showed up. And he always the first to show up and the last to go home. Very dedicated, strong Nembutsu follower. At one service, he came up to the front for oshoko or incense offering. And we chanted Amida Kyo on the day, and 2 ministers sat in the altar area. Mr. Tanaka recited the Nembutsu very strongly, and both ministers listened to his voice, and we forgot to continue on chanting. So that chanting was stopped in the middle. After the service, we always had tea and refreshment and enjoyed chatting with each other. One time, I said to Mr. Tanaka-san, I was struggling with my English language still. And he replied to me, Sensei, he was living in Canada more than 75 years, yet he was still struggling with his language. But he continued to say that he always felt fortunate to chant the word that it's written by our founder, Shinran Shonin. How he fortunate to chant the Shoshinge in original form. And he also said to me that when he recited the Nembutsu, it is the same Nembutsu as Shinran Shonin recited. And not only Shinran Shonin, but his parents, grandparents, friends, all who have gone to the Pure Land before, they recited the same Nembutsu. So when he recited the Nembutsu, he felt that we are all connected through Buddha's teaching, Nembutsu. And Mr. Tanaka mentioned to me that it could be his own interpretation, but he took the Nembutsu as a message from the Buddha. And with his Japanese accent, he understood Nembutsu as Orai yo. Orai. It's all right. Everything is all right, no matter what he is doing, no matter where he was. Amida Buddha is always with him and never abandoned him. That's how he took it. Through Mr. Tanaka, he showed me or taught me the right wisdom or Amida's wisdom with. Another individual I met, a lady who was in the hospice, although it was a very brief visit, but she taught me an important lesson about compassion. One morning, I received a phone call at my office, and it was from the hospice center. And the staff personnel told me that the lady requested to speak with Buddha. And I was given basic information about her over the phone. She was the third generation Japanese Canadian. And she considered herself a Buddhist, but she never attended a Buddhist temple for the service. She married and had a family. And I believe it was my third year as a Kaikyoshi in Canada. And I wasn't confident enough, and I didn't have firm answer if she asked me about what she would be in her afterlife. To the hospice facility, it was about half an hour drive from my office. And while driving, I was thinking what kind of words I could offer her when I got there, in front of the entrance, her husband and two daughters are standing and waiting for my arrival. I parked my car in a parking space, and as soon as I got off a car, we greeted each other. To me, older daughter looked to be her teens, and a younger girl looked 5 or 6 years old. And I was told her husband took me to her room, and I met Nancy for first time. Nancy was lying on a bed, and I was told that she was in her mid-40s. But because of her cancer treatment, she was born skinny, and her skin looked dried up and dark. Again, I briefly introduced myself, and I was going to explain as follows. In Jodo Shinshu, when we pass away, through Amida Buddha's working, we surely will be born in a pure land. So no worries. Actually, before I was going to say this, Nancy tried to set something. But due to her treatment, she was so weak. So I couldn't catch her word. Again, she tried to tell something, but I couldn't understand her. So I asked her husband to help me. The word she tried to tell me was really shocking and eye-opening. She said to me, drink, drink. She offered me something to drink, not for herself. She cared about my drink in her deathbed. I'm sure that she had many things to worry about. Soon she would leave daughters and her husband behind, and she had to be concerned about her afterlife. But putting everything aside, and she worried about my drink. Without thinking, I put myself first, and others second. And Buddhism teaches us that because it is blind passions, particularly self-centered thinking. Shinran Shonin considered that it is impossible for us to act out of true compassion because we are unable to give up all our attachments. Nancy gave me a lesson on Amida's boundless compassion, putting others first and myself later, without return. Through many people around us, we are very fortunate to encounter this rare and wonderful teaching of Nembutsu. However, we easily forgot about this, and I tended to think, I studied this teaching by myself. But in fact, many teachers, good Dharma teachers around us, and showed us the working of Amida Buddha through their own lives. To close my talk, I would like to read our pledge, which was delivered by the 25th head minister of Honganji, Monshu Kojun Otani. As part of his official message, he introduced the essence of Jodo Shinshu teachings in the 4 verses. So let me allow you to share the screen. Our pledge: breaking out of my shell, I shall carefully share a warm smile and speak gentle words, just like the kind Buddha. Not becoming lost in my greed, anger, and ignorance, I shall be open-minded and act accordingly, just like the calm and peaceful Buddha. Not putting myself first, I shall share in the joy and sadness of others, just like the compassionate Buddha. Realizing the gift of life we have received, I shall live each day to its fullest, like the Buddha who continues to emancipate all. I find it encouraging with the last line of each verse ending with just like the Buddha. And I appreciated the way our Monshu encourages us to aim in conducting ourselves like the Buddha in our daily lives. Although we not be able to perfectly act like the Buddha, but it's important to try it, aim to become like the Buddha. So let us strive to live life of warmth and compassion and continue to share the Dharma through our actions, just like the Buddha. Thank you for listening my Dharma talk. And to close, please join me in Gassho, showing our respect and gratitude to Amida's wisdom and compassion. Saman, 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 saman.